They built Caterpillar's yellow iron by day and were some of the world's greatest basketball players by night. During the golden age of basketball in the 1950s, these men worked and played for Caterpillar.
Caterpillar has had a long history with basketball, really going back to one of its predecessor companies, the Holt Manufacturing Company. They had a team called the Caterpillars, and that was in 1915. The Caterpillar Diesels started really in the 1930s, but didn't come to prominence until 1947, when their coach Marv Hamilton got them started. The Caterpillar Diesels were players who were successful on the college level, were recruited by the company, but weren't paid to play basketball. They were amateurs, and they had jobs within Caterpillar in all different types of positions. Frank McCabe was maybe one of the most successful players who played for both the Caterpillar Diesels and the Peoria Cats. And he is also part of the Peoria Basketball Hall of Fame.
Well, the National Industrial Basketball League was formed by a bunch of companies. Goodyear Tire was part of it. Phillips 66, Phillips Oilers were part of it. Caterpillar was part of it. Allen Bradley, which was an electrical control manufacturer in Milwaukee, was part of it.
Ollie Helderly played not only for the Peoria Cats, but goes back to playing for the Caterpillar Diesels. His first year was in 1949.
49 was probably the year that they started to really say we're going to build the program and seed it with players from college. In 1949, when I was graduating, the National AAU tournament was held in Oklahoma City, and we ended up in the quarterfinals playing Caterpillar. Marv Hamilton, the coach, talked to me after the game and asked me if I'd be interested in interviewing at Caterpillar. And I said, yeah, sure, that sounds pretty good, and I never thought much more about it. Well, then one day the coach calls me into his office, and he was a man of few words, except when you were practicing, you got a lot of his words, but he said, did you ever hear from Caterpillar? And I said, no. So he picked up the phone and got a hold of Marv Hamilton, and the next thing I knew, I had a ticket to fly to Peoria, which I did, and interviewed, and they offered me a job.
Players played for the NIBL because one is they had a steady job. The NBA was really in its infancy, and it didn't pay well, and a lot of times the teams folded, so players tended to go to the Industrial League. Gene Peters played 1 year for the Peoria Cats, but Gene went on to have a very successful career. One of the things that he had done was bringing the parts facility from East Peoria to Morton.
At that time, the NBA was in existence, and they still signed some good players. But a lot of the players were a little reluctant to playing in the NBA because they didn't pay that well. And after the season, they just kind of cut you loose and you were on your own. A lot of the skilled players played in the Industrial League because they had employment, after their basketball career.
Warren Womble was the second coach of the Caterpillar Diesels. Warren first was recruited by Marv Hamilton and was a player on the team. He played for a couple years and then became an assistant coach, later taking over as head coach during the 1950 season.
Warren was sort of, I would say, an assistant coach. Marv Hamilton was pretty active in the early days, but I think Warren just sort of gradually took over.
Well, I worked for Warren at Caterpillar for a while, quite a while, and he's a great guy. He was tough on the guys because they were practicing after work and they'd get tired, and when they'd scrimmage, there was a lot of bumping and knocking going on, knees and elbows, but they just laughed their way through it.
He did a heck of a job, and he coached against foreign competition 25 times, considering the Olympics, assistant coach of the 60 Olympics, the team he took to Russia. When we won in 1954, we won the right to represent the country in the Pan American Games. I don't know how many games they played down there, but I told Warren, I said, I want to get down with my career at Caterpillar as an engineer. why don't you use that trip as a carrot to bring in, another good ball player to take my place? And he did, and he got Bert Bourne.
Joan Bourne is the wife of Bert Bourne, one of the most accomplished Peoria Cats players.
Well, I think for the most part they did pretty well, but a lot of times they were awfully tired. You work all day and you leave work and go right into the gym and practice for several hours. I mean, they were in shape, of course, to be doing that, but I think they were tired too.
Elmer Tolson was a big man who played forward and center for the Peoria Cats.
Phillips, 66 Oilers. They had a reputation, some of the getting the better players, I think. The expectation was always that was the rivalry, and we would try to, always win over Phillips.
The best memory I have probably of the Caterpillar experience was me playing on the first team that beat Phillips 66.
Well, I only played the 1 year, but it was pretty intense between Cat and Phillips for dominance, and Cat usually prevailed in that scrimmage, but it was quite a deal.
The 1951-52 season of the Caterpillar Diesels was their most successful season. They went into the AAU tournament and defeated the Phillips 66 Oilers to capture the AAU title. By capturing the AAU title, they made a playoff which was held between the most successful NCAA college basketball teams and teams from the Industrial Basketball League. Caterpillar played against both Industrial League teams and NCAA teams for the right to go to the Olympics. They ended up playing in the finals against a very successful Kansas team.
When we beat Kansas 62-60, made our coach, Warren Wambu, who actually was his first full year as a coach, the head coach of the Olympics. And the Kansas coach, who was Fog Allen, 30 years, big-time college coach, became the assistant coach.
It was a very interesting relationship because Fog Allen is a Hall of Fame coach, and Warren is a young guy. And I was amazed that he said that Fog Allen was just behind him 100%. He said, whatever you say, you're the boss, and you call the shots, and if I can help you, ask me, and I'll be glad to help. And he was just a perfect assistant coach. He played his role perfectly, according to Warren.
Well, after winning this exciting playoffs, the team flew in by charter to Peoria Airport. There was a parade that went all the way from the airport past the East Peoria plant. Thousands of people were at the parade, including Caterpillar president L.B. Newmiller.
The 5 players and the coach, of course, went to the Olympics, but the company sent all the rest of the players to go to the Olympics to see them.
Our finals, I think, were played probably about 5,000 people is all that were there. It was not a big deal. There was no television, none of the things that you see nowadays. We played the Russians twice, as it happened to be. The first time we beat them, I think, 84-56, and they got concerned because of the fast play we were playing, and they had watched Oklahoma style, A&M, Hank Iba style, where they'd hold the ball and go slow. So they tried holding the ball on us the second game. The score at the half was 17-15. We were ahead, and that put the pressure on them, and things got a little bit looser, so the final score was 36-25 to win that one. And of course we were thrilled to win it. And then the gold medal ceremony took place after that, and they had the 3 steps. And Dan Pippen was captain of the team, and he was the first one in line, and received the gold medal and a little bouquet of flowers. And the rest of us did that. Tears just rolled down my eyes. It was a fantastic experience.
Their amateur status was called into question, and they had to show that the players were actually paid as employees, which they brought records to New York to show this. As part of that, all of the Industrial League teams had to change their names to show kind of a disconnect between their corporate affiliation.
We had to take payroll records to New York to prove we were not paid. And out of that came a name change from the Diesels to the Cats. The decision was by these powers that be in New York that we could not have a product as part of our name. So we became the Peoria Cats, which was actually a good thing.
By the 1953-54 season, there started to be turnover of players, which would have been the ones that played on the Olympic team, where you start to see players such as Bert Bourne, who was a high recruit from the University of Kansas, start to enter the program.
Bert was a good player. He was probably one of the highest ranked players.
Well, his first love was baseball, but naturally he got so big and tall that I think they were after him for basketball. I think Bert decided, well, I think I better call Caterpillar. So he called Caterpillar and decided he wanted to come to work.
Bert was interested in a career, and that's why he chose Caterpillar. A story that was told where he kind of came to this conclusion was he saw a young player, his name was Wilt Chamberlain, and after he saw him play, he realized where the talent was really heading to, and he thought, you know what, maybe basketball isn't going to be a full-time career. I need to find a career that I can have to grow a family and move on.
He came here in 1954, and he retired in 1997. So he worked there 43 years.
Well, 1954 was a very interesting year for the team. They had 3 years of great success. They had just won their third AAU tournament. So they were going to Brazil to play in a World Cup. They were playing world-class competition, and they were a dominant team. They won all of their games and the tournament by an average of over 20 points. Really, there was only one game that was close. And one thing that's very interesting about this in other international play is Caterpillar never lost an international game. Warren Womble had won over 30 games in international competition without a loss.
In all the games against foreign competition, Warren was never beat.
Warren had an amazing 10 years. He won, involved in 2 Olympics. He won, I don't know how many AAU championships. He won the Pan American Games, and then, of course, made this trip through Russia, where I think he played 8 or 9 games. And I remember talking to Chuck Wolf about the Russian trip, and when he described the ball that they used and the playing conditions, it's just unbelievable that they won those 8 or 9 games. It must have been just terrible. And I've seen the ball that they use, and I don't know how anybody can do anything with the darn thing.
Chuck Wolf was a guard for the Peoria Cats. Bert Bourne used to say about Chuck that he had the leaping ability of Michael Jordan.
He was a star in high school, and he was won trophies there, and then he went to the University of North Dakota. He's in their Hall of Fame, and he made the Decade Team of the Year.
Warren Womble was a master recruiter and had a lot of contacts within the basketball world nationally, and he would tap these contacts to see who would be the right fit for Caterpillar.
Elmer was a real scrapper. I can remember Elmer, and Elmer was a unique basketball player. He didn't do anything the normal way. He always had a little different way of getting things done. He jumped and twisted in the air and did little funny things that made him a real effective basketball player.
I came to Caterpillar in 1955 and played probably through about 58. I went to Eastern Kentucky University, and after I got out of service, I got a call from the sheriff that Warren Womble had tried to reach me. So that's the way I came to visit Peoria, Illinois. I was both forward and played center some of the time. Because I was drafted by the Baltimore Bullets to play in the NBA, but of course I had to turn them down too because of obligation in the service. When I hired in, I went in inventory control for a little while, went through the college training program, and ended up in CAT America's foreign trade for a while, and ended up in the engine division at Mossville.
While in Alaska, I got a phone call in the middle of June from Warren Womble, who became the coach, and Marv Hamilton, who was the athletic director for Caterpillar, wondering if I had interest in coming to work for Caterpillar. And I'm a graduate civil engineer, and I thought, yeah, heck yeah.
As the team became more successful and more prominent, they started playing in the Bradley Field House.
The field house was very nice back then. It's good floor.
Cold.
And Pete Van Auken ran the concession stands.
Yeah, so we always visited with him at halftime and ate his goodies.
Yes. And I got season tickets long before I met Chuck. So I always liked basketball. I think that was my favorite sport. So I liked it, and it was fun ball.
Yeah, it was.
The teams that came into play were really good, and Caterpillar was great.
I can remember that from college to playing in that league, the speed of the game just was intense. It was just a lot faster. I can remember the crowds at the field house. Sunday afternoons at Bradley when Cat played was quite an experience. Even the home games was announced on the radio, so it was pretty much a community affair. And Bradley basketball and Cat basketball used to be the big things in Peoria.
In 1956, the Olympic team was holding exhibition games across the country. Because of Caterpillar's reputation and success that Warren Womble and his teams had in 1952, they held a game actually at the Bradley Fieldhouse and played the Caterpillar team. Caterpillar only lost by a few points, but what was really impressive about this, there were future NBA Hall of Famers that played in this game, such as Casey Jones and Bill Russell.
I think probably the game I remember most vividly is our first game in the 56-57 season was against the U.S. Olympic team. Bill Russell, a couple players from Phillips was on that team, that Olympic team. And I remember Bill Russell playing, and what an outstanding player he ended up being. But I can remember that game pretty vividly. Of course, the Olympic team beat Cat that night at the field house.
And then in '60, Warren ended up being assistant coach, and the team placed two players, Al Kelly and Bob Boozer, on the Olympic team. So Cat had, over the years, had seven players on the Olympic teams. And Bob Boozer, by the way, went into the pros later. He was another outstanding player.
Bob Boozer came playing after I had no longer playing, so I just was with him for a little while, but I remember he had an outstanding reputation of being a good basketball player.
It was a great intramural company-sponsored activity, but as time went on and the travel became expensive, it got to be just too much for the company to continue to support it.
In 1960, Caterpillar discontinued its basketball program. The NBA had become much more successful. Teams were much more stable. They were paying their players more.
Caterpillar having the team and their travel and their involvement with the AAU and how it really spread the name of Caterpillar. Chuck always used to, long after he quit playing, he'd meet someone and they'd say, "Oh, I know you. You play for Caterpillar. My dad took me to all the games when I was a kid."
Why the NIBL as opposed to pro? I think at that time, a lot of people, certainly myself, was interested in a job, in a career.
The career with Caterpillar, actually, the most important, the most meaningful thing to me, besides winning a gold medal early on, was an award I received just before I retired, called the Golden Beaver Award for service to the industry. And I was given that award in January of 1989, just a short time before I retired. Gold at the end and gold at the start were pretty awesome.
When you look at this and you realize that you are and have played against the best and had an opportunity to win in the world today, opportunity is what everybody needs. And since I had this opportunity, I'm very grateful that for this type of record of what occurred.
I can remember getting on the bus and going over to the old armory for practice after work.
11 years of basketball, but 40 and a third years for working for Caterpillar. That's really a tremendous deal.
I was real pleased with my career. I worked with an awful lot of nice people.
Once a Caterpillar employee, always a Caterpillar employee.
And he was very loyal to Caterpillar. It was love, yeah, it really was.
It's always fun to reminisce, especially when they're good memories, which these are.
My name is Warren Womble. I coached the Peoria Cats for 10 good years. Kids that played for me at Caterpillar, they worked awfully hard. Practiced every day. It was just the best 10 years of any coach's life. It was just one of those experiences that I didn't hardly know how to handle it at first, but I don't know. I can't say enough about Caterpillar or the players. It's always been my fondest memory.
As a member of the National Industrial Basketball League, Caterpillar built one of the nation's most competitive teams. The players were amateurs. They worked all day in the factories and offices, and then practiced ball. And they won, capturing 5 AAU titles and winning numerous international tournaments, and even gold at 2 Olympics. They came to Peoria to play 2 or 3 years of basketball after college, and many of them stayed with Caterpillar for decades. They were, and remain today, champions.